Daf Yomi Tractate Chullin, page 8a, top of the page with the words Amar Rabbi Zera. And I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier. I like to pay attention to these little details when it comes to page numbers and dates and other numbers. Every now and then, the daf number matches with the date, either the Hebrew date or the Gregorian date. And since we entered Chullin on just about a week ago on Shabbat, we started page 2 of Chullin, and that was May 2nd. So every day since then, it's been the daf number has been the date. And I don't know why I find that so interesting, but it does happen every now and then. And you can think it's bound to happen, right? Over time, things are about to match up, and of course, it's only going to match up for in less than a month, because then it goes over one. But it's interesting when it happens, and I tend to think that there's something behind that. There's a synchronization of sorts, and this could be indicative of something else, and I'm still trying to find out what those implications are, or what those indications are. But in any case, Chullin 8 matches May 8. With that, top of Chullin 8, with the words Amar Rabbi Zera. Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Shmuel Li ben Saki Mishachat Bah שחיטתו כשרה, חידודה קודם ללימונה, ויקץ דין בית השחיטה מרוויח רווח. Rabbi Zera says that Shmuel says, if one heated a knife until it became white hot and slaughtered an animal with it, ouch, tzar b'lechaim? No? Ouch. Okay, anyway, if one heated a knife until it was white hot knife, I don't know how he managed to get it close to the animal without it moving, because it's white hot. I mean, he must go real fast. It's like that. Anyway, why would he do something like that? Why in the world would he do something like that? Okay, anyway, the point is that he put a knife in fire until it became white hot, and then he slaughtered an animal with it. And they say the slaughter is valid, as cutting the relevant simanim with a nice sharp blade preceded the effect of its white heat. Had the effect of the heat preceded the cutting, the animal would have been rendered a treifa, an animal with a wound that will cause it to die within 12 months, whereas the slaughter was completed, before the slaughter was completed by searing the windpipe in the gullet. The Gemara asks, but aren't there the sides of the knife which burn the throat and render the animal treifa? The Gemara answers, the area of the slaughter in the throat parts immediately after the incision, and the tissue on either side of the incision is not seared by the white hot blade. Anyway, okay. I can't say yes or no to that, but I would think that if white hot blade is going through the neck, it's going to sear something. But anyway. Mishum shechin nidon or mishum michve nidon. A dilemma was raised before the sages. If one heated a skewer until it became white hot and struck a person with it, and after the wound healed, a leprous mark developed, is that mark judged as a leprous boil, or is it judged as a leprous boil, or is it adjudged as a leprous burn? My nafkamina lechiditanya shechin umichve mitamin b'shvua echad b'shnei simoni b'sa'ar lovon ubev pisioin. ולא מכיל כאן הכתוב, לומר שאין מצטרפין זה עם זה. What is the practical difference whether it is adjudged a boil or burn? What's the difference? It's a leprosy is a leprosy, no? No, there is a difference. The difference is, for that which is taught in a braita, both a leprous boil and a leprous burn become impure during 1 week of quarantine with 2 symptoms, with white hair that grows in the leprous mark, and with spreading of the leprous mark. And why did the verse divide them into 2 separate passages, even though their halachic status is the same? The verse divided them to say that they do not join together to constitute the requisite measure of impure leprous marks. Rather, there is impurity only if the boil or the burn constitutes that measure individually. Vitanya, Eizehu shechin ve'eizehu michva, laka ba'etz ve'even ve'gefes v'chamei teveria, ובכל דבר שלא במחמס האור, לאסויה והרמיקרו, זהו שכין, ואיזהו מחווה, נכווה בגחלס, ברמץ, בסיד רותח, בגיפסיס רותח, ובכל דבר הבמחמס האור, לאסויך מהאור, זוהי מחווה. And is taught in the Braita, which wound is a boil and which is a burn. If one was struck with wood, with a stone, with pumice, with the hot springs of Tiberias, or with any item that is not heated by fire, a phrase that serves to include lead that was mined from its source in the ground, which is occasionally hot enough to burn a person. This impression left on the skin is a boil. And which is a burn? If one was burned with a coal, with hot ashes, with boiling limestone, with boiling gypsum, or with any item that is heated by fire, a phrase that serves to include water heated by fire, this impression left on the skin is a burn. ותניא שכין ומחווה. אם שכין קודם למחווה, ביטל מחווה את השכין. ואם מחווה קודם את השכין, ביטל שכין את המחווה. And then it's taught in Braita, if there is a boil and a burn on the same place, on the skin and a leprous mark developed, the latter wound determines the nature of the leprosy. Therefore, if the boil preceded the burn nullifies the boil, and the mark is a leprous burn. And if the burn preceded the boil nullifies the burn, and the mark is a leprous boil. V'hacha hechidami, kegon, dehava bechatzi gris, shchin, mikoro, v'libin shapudi gabo, v'nafak bechatzi gris achel. And here, where the dilemma was raised, whether the mark that develops from being struck with a hot skewer is a boil or a burn, what are the circumstances? It is a case where initially there was a boil, half the size of a split bean on the person's skin, and one heated a skewer until it became white hot, and struck him with it, and another mark half the size of a split bean emerged on the skin there. Ma chavta kadim yate havla muvatele lechavta vehavele shchin umichva velo mitztarfin oidilma havla kadim yate chavta umivatele lehavla. The Gemara clarifies the dilemma. What is the halacha? Does the effect of the blow come first, and then the effect of the heat comes and nullifies the effect of the blow, and it is half a measure boil and half a measure burn? and they do not join together to constitute a full measure, or perhaps the effect of the heat comes first, and then the effect of the blow comes and nullifies the effect of the heat. And it is a half a measure boil and a half a measure boil. It is a half a measure boil and a half a measure burn, I think they meant to say. Oh, maybe it's half a measure boil and and they combine together. Okay, 2 half measures of a boil. Okay. Toshima, Yom Rabbi Zera Shmuel. Liben Zarim Mishol Boshita Tokashera. Chiduda Kodem Lelibuna. Alma Chavda Kadim. Chidud Shani. The Gemara suggests coming here a resolution to the dilemma from that which Rabbi Zera says that Shmuel says. If one heated a knife until it became white hot and slaughtered an animal with it, his slaughter is valid as cutting the relevant simanim with the knife's sharp blade preceded the effect of its white heat. Apparently, the effect of the blow comes first. The Gemara rejects that proof. Cutting with a sharp blade is different from striking with a blunt object, and only in the case of a blade does the cut precede the effect of the heat. Tashma liben shapud v'hikabo nidon mishum michvat esh alma chavda kadim hasamnami devarazeh mivraz dahainu chidud. The Gemara suggests, coming here a resolution to the dilemma from a brayta. If one heated a skewer until it became white hot and struck a person with it, and after the wound healed a leprous mark developed, that mark is adjudged as a leprous burn caused by fire. Apparently, the effect of the blow precedes the effect of the burn. The Gemara rejects that proof. There too, the reference is to a case where he stabbed the skin with a skewer, which is the same as cutting with a sharp blade. I hope you move away from this violent stuff sooner than later. Amar Rabbi Nachman, Amar Rabbi Baravu, Sakin Shalom Elazar, Mutar Lishkot Ba, Ve'asur Lachtoch Ba Basar, Mutar Lishkot Ba Mikalken Hu, Ve'asur Lachtoch Ba Basar Mitaken Hu. Rav Nachman says that Rabbi Baravu says, with regard to a knife used for idol worship, it is permitted to slaughter an animal with it. Really? Okay, that's what they say. It's permitted to slaughter an animal with it, but it's prohibited to cut meat with it. Why should it be different? Who knows? It is permitted to slaughter an animal with it because slaughtering is a destructive action vis-a-vis the animal, which is worth more when it is alive. But it is prohibited to cut meat with it because once the animal is slaughtered, cutting is a constructive action that renders the meat manageable. So it makes it more valuable when it's cut up in pieces. If it's just a big cow, you can't eat it. You have to cut it up, you have to do some butchering. Amarov apamim sheshochet aso b'misukenes u'mechatech mutar u'be'atmed k'amane kurban. Rava said there are times when it is prohibited for one who slaughters an animal to use a knife used for idol worship. For example, in the case of an animal that is in danger, meaning that it is about to die. If he does not slaughter the animal, it would become an unslaughtered carcass and depreciate in value. And there are times when it is permitted for one who cuts meat to use a knife of idol worship. For example, in the case of an animal whose thighs are intended to be sent as a gift to a person of stature, cutting it into pieces would render it unfit for this purpose, thereby diminishing its value. The Gemara challenges and derive that it is prohibited to use a knife used for idol worship, not because the benefit from it is prohibited, but due to the residue fat of forbidden carcasses on the knife. How about that? And then we turn the page to 8b, and the Gemara answers a very simple, matter-of-fact, practical, reasonable circumstance answer. Chadash. The Gemara rejects the possibility. Rav Nachman's referring to a case of a new knife on which there is no residue. So, Einachinami, if there was residue, we're talking about a new knife. Why didn't we say it? I don't know. That's a question. All these Hachabamaya type of stuff. It's always like after the fact, and then you made a case. It's kind of like you worked around it. I don't know if that was the original intention. I always have that issue with Hachabamaya Skinan. It's talking about like this, but you wouldn't have said that from just the outset. And also, sometimes when the Mishnah states cases, it states all the circumstances of it, and only when it leaves it out, and then you have to work around it. So I always wondered if it was really, if it's just working around it. But anyway, that's what they say here. They say that it might be prohibited to use a knife for idol worship because of the residue fat that's on the knife. We're talking about a new knife. Okay? And now we're at 8b, and we'll start with the next Amud. Next video, I mean.